Welcome, everyone. I guess it's Wednesday. I'm sort of lost track of time since we had the 3-day weekend. So if it's not Wednesday, I don't know. It's what happens when you're retired. You know, every day is a Saturday. It's really hard to pinpoint what day it is. But as far as I know, today is Wednesday. We have 3 bills we're going to take a look at. We're going to start with House Bill 235, Career Technical Education Equipment and Supplies. And with us today, we have our House Education Chairman, Representative Andrew. Go ahead. Tell us what you want us to know.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. House Bill 235 ensures career and technical education funding is used as intended to prepare Wyoming students for the workforce. Right now, the block grant funds generated directly by enrollment in high school CTE programs are not always being spent on those programs. The portion meant for materials, supplies, and equipment is being used in areas that have nothing to do with CTE. While this is allowed under the current block grant system, it defeats the purpose of these funds. CTE is critical to Wyoming's economy. Our industries need trained workers, but without proper investment in these programs, we are failing our students and businesses. Last year, only 55.1% of these funds were reported spent in these areas. That means that nearly half of funding was used elsewhere, even though 60% of today's job openings in Wyoming require CTE skills. We can't afford to continue this trend. House Bill 235 pulls this funding from the block grant and creates a categorical grant that directs these funds where they belong: the materials, supplies, and equipment that prepare students for jobs. This bill creates an automatic grant that requires no further paperwork by the district or the department, and the funds can be saved for larger purchases. And another thing I want to note is that this bill includes the effects of the next bill on your agenda, because we basically create our own individual categorical grant for this particular category. We decided just to amend House Bill 18 into it as well.
Okay, questions for Representative Andrew? So one question I have, Representative, is do you have the data for that showing like what schools spent what on CTE versus those who didn't spend the money on? I mean, do you have any of that data? Or is that data available, I guess? Maybe our Department of Ed has that too. Oh. Okay. You have a handout then?
Yeah, Madam Chairman, Jessie Defoe gave us a handout for her to accompany her public testimony.
Okay.
So if I can give that now or when she comes up to talk.
I wouldn't mind having it now, yeah.
Okay.
How about the rest of you? Yeah, that would be great.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Representative.
So that you should be able to look at that, but on average, it's 55.1%.
And just as a follow-up, what's the reason that some of the districts are not spending it as it was intended to be? Any idea on that? Are they saving it for maybe large equipment, or do you have any idea on that?
Madam Chairman, that is one thing that is done, is they do save it for the long term for large equipment. However, they're still allowed to do that with this bill. That does not change that. I think that it is just being spent in other places. It's hard to say where exactly that particular pot of money is being spent, but what we do know is it's not being spent on CTE in grades 9 through 12. It was actually a recommendation of the consultants they hired back in the early 2000s to make this a separate category, and warned that this could be the effect of not doing that, is that it would be watered down and not spent appropriately. But that recommendation was not taken.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, go ahead, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, question on the dates. Page 2, line 5, it says commencing school year 2026-27. And then if you look in the back on the appropriation, it's for the period July 1, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026, so the school year before that. What's the interplay in those dates and why are they different?
Representative Andrew?
Madam Chairwoman, I believe that is because the amount received for these grants is always calculated based on the year prior. That's true of the block grant as well.
Any follow-up on that, Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, okay, so they're calculated on the enrollment in the year prior. But why does that have the appropriation for the school year before the thing seems to commence? I don't understand. Maybe the State Department can enlighten us, but there's something there I don't understand.
Any ideas on that, Representative?
Madam Chairwoman, that's a good question. I would probably need a little more time to read
Need to
through
call
this
a
to get
friend
you an
or
answer.
call a
Yeah.
lifeline on that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we'll probably hear from the Department of Ed here in a minute. Maybe they can expound on that, so. Other questions for the good representative? Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Andrew, specifically what aspects of the funding end up falling into the categorical bin? Does it include the FTEs of the CTE teachers themselves? It doesn't. So it is the 29% basically that it goes to materials and supplies. Anything else go into the categorical grant?
Go ahead, Representative.
Madam Chairwoman, no. It is specifically that 29% money used for supplies and materials.
Okay, and only that. Thank you, that's helpful.
That was a question I was going to ask, so you and I were on the same page. Other questions for the representative? I just have one, and again, I'm not sure how districts would handle this, where this is pulled out separately. Is that going to kind of muddy the waters with how their block grant is used? I don't know, but do you have any idea on that?
Madam Chairwoman, I don't believe so. All it does is essentially silo this money for that specific purpose because it's not being used, it hasn't historically been used, and we want to encourage it to be used because it's such an important part of providing for, developing our economy in Wyoming. This is where the jobs are, and we're not spending it.
Could the representative speak a little
Yeah,
closer in the microphone?
maybe get a little closer to the
I'm
mic.
having trouble hearing him. even with my
And this room isn't good for acoustics, yeah. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, sorry about that, Madam Chairwoman. I mean, what the bill essentially does is silo this money because we want to say, as a legislature, that it is very important that the school districts are spending this money specifically on what it is generated for. It is generated directly by the presence of these 9th through 12th grade students in these high school CTE classes. And we're saying that we want them to spend this money specifically on that because, as I said in my earlier testimony, 60% of jobs that are open in Wyoming require CTE skills. And it's unfortunate that we are not currently investing in that education, how we are spending on that education.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead, Senator.
Madam Chairman, on the appropriation, so is the appropriation needed because you're expanding the funding for CTE? Because if we were just taking a piece of the existing block grant that's supposed to be used for CTE and isolating it and protecting it, I wouldn't think we would need an additional appropriation. Madam Chairman, I don't quite understand what's going on there.
Go ahead, Representative.
Madam Chairwoman, the appropriation is needed because this is a totally separate grant outside of the block grant. So we need to specifically fund it.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. To Senator Scott's question, it's going to be the same amount of money, but when it's made categorical, it's being pulled to the side, so to speak, and therefore it's identified as an appropriation instead of through the standard funding. But the standard funding would theoretically be reduced. The only question that I have is how this relates to rebate recapture. And is this, does the 29% then come entirely from the state's side of the school foundation program funding model instead of local resources first, backfilled by it? That's the one thing I don't see. I do see that it will be the same amount of money. I just don't know how it relates to rebate and recapture. Do you have a sense of that?
Go ahead, Representative.
Madam Chairman, that would, yes, be my understanding of the effect.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All right, thank you so much for your testimony, and we'll go ahead and open it up for the public to testify. Maybe the Department of Ed would like to come forward and give us their 2 cents on it. Thank you. Welcome back. Please introduce yourselves.
Good morning to this snowy day, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Wanda Maloney. I'm here with Trent Carroll from the Department of Education. We would just like to say that the superintendent values career and technical education. She's made it part of her strategic plan, and she does support the amendments that were made by the House for a number of reasons. It does make this a flow through so that the districts would have access without having to apply for it. They would still get the money to be able to use that. It does also include House Bill 18, which would increase funding for those small schools. And finally, I would just repeat what Representative Andrew said in terms of this being a 9 through 12 grant and supporting our 9 through 12 students. The superintendent would also like it to be considered during recalibration that we look at the younger grades. We know that many schools and districts support their students in earlier grades, 7th and 8th grade, to have career and technical education. And it is expensive. And so looking at funding that would be helpful.
Questions for Ms. Maloney? Yeah, it's interesting. I actually had a couple of districts that reached out to me and asked if we would ever take a look at, junior high or middle school. And I assumed the same thing. We'd have to take a look at it during recalibration and decide from there. But I think it's a good point. And I think the sooner we can get those younger kids going down that track that are interested in it, the better off we are. So, other questions for Ms. Maloney? Yes, go ahead, Senator.
Madam Chairman, same questions I asked Representative Andrew on the timing and the appropriation.
Go ahead, Mr.
Madam
Carroll.
Chairman, Trent Carroll, Wyoming Department of Education. Senator Scott, do you mind just running through your question one more time? I was trying to follow you earlier.
Okay, the bill on page 2, line 5 says commencing with school year 26-27, yet the appropriation is for the previous school year. And I didn't understand the difference there. It would seem that one of those dates ought to be changed, but I have a suspicion there's something in there I don't understand. And Madam Chairman, the other question is, why do we need an appropriation at all here if we're just using the same money that's already available in the block grant?
Madam Chair,
ahead, Mr.
Senator
Carroll.
Scott, I may need a minute to look into that. I agree with you that it appears the appropriation is primarily needed beginning with fiscal year 26. So I will look into that. The other question, though, about why is an appropriation necessary? I believe, as Senator Rothfuss mentioned, really it takes the funding that's currently part of the block grant, part of the funding model, and separates it and makes it a categorical grant. If you look at the fiscal note for this bill, you'll see that there is an offset there listed under the non-administrative impact. And that's where we see the kind of the breakdown between the recapture, and it does shift that essentially to the state funding.
Follow up. Go ahead, Senator.
We don't have the fiscal note with the green copy.
Madam Chairman, I don't have copies with me, but probably make that happen.
We can get it upstairs.
Yeah. Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Carroll or Ms. Maloney? We may have an amendment that will fix the question about the dates. So we'll take a look at that if this bill moves forward, so. Yeah, go ahead, Senator Office.
And Trent, I'm going to pull up the fiscal note online, but did anything change? Do you know if anything changed in the House amendments that would significantly modify the fiscal note? Did they make any significant alterations?
Madam Chairman, Senator Office, I don't believe that the amendments in the House would impact the fiscal note.
Thank you.
Other questions? The Department of Ed. Just, again, I'll ask the same question that I asked Representative Andrew. Where it's pulled out, I guess, just maybe explain that a little bit about how districts will handle this, if you could. I just want to make sure that it's streamlined and it's easy to do and easy for you guys to track. So if you could just follow up a little bit on that.
Madam Chairman, good question. One of the amendments in the House was really intended to streamline and simplify the process. The original version would have required districts to apply for the funds. We wanted this to be as seamless as it is today, where it's basically flow-through funding to the districts without an administrative burden, either for them or for the department. And so the money will flow right out to the districts. You know, the big change here is really just that it has to be used for the intended purpose of the CTE supplies and materials.
And just as a follow-up to that, what would be the overview, I guess, of the Department of Education, just to kind of make sure that the funds, once they're taken out, are spent where they need to be?
Madam Chairman, districts currently report all of their CT expenditures to us, and that would continue. You'll see in the bill that there is a reporting requirement identified. We already collect that information. We don't feel like that would be a big lift to implement. So that would continue, and we would certainly be monitoring that and reporting back as requested.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Senator Office.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I've had a chance to look at the fiscal note and hoping for a little more explanation. I see under the non-administrative impact that it talks about the school foundation program current K-12 funding model is a $3.8 million gain, so to speak, and then you have a $4.6 million cost associated with the bill itself for a difference of around $800,000. My expectation would be that it would be half and half, and I don't see why it wouldn't be a 50% rate, because the districts pay around 50%, the state pays around 50% typically, based on my mental math. So why isn't it 4.6 million cost total, which makes sense, right? That just seems to be the calculation of the 29% statewide. I would expect the state to be picking up both halves, and that doesn't seem to be how the math is going. So what am I missing there?
Madam Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, I think your question would be best answered if we looked at the specific recapture districts and the specific CTE funding that the model is currently generating for those districts and how that works in the projection. I don't have that breakdown with me right now.
Okay.
But I'd be happy to send that over to you if that's something you're interested in. But it is, specific to the recapture districts. That's what's generating that $800,000.
Right. Madam Chairman, am I misremembering? It does seem to me the state picks up the tab for roughly 50%. And I don't know what it is. It changes on a year-to-year basis of what the state's portion is of the, well, maybe it's not, of the funding. Do you have a sense of what it is this year?
Madam Chairman, Senator Office, to maybe just a little clarification of the overall
Yeah, so
guarantee.
exactly. You have the total school foundation program guarantee. The state picks up on the order of a half, and districts pay on the order of a half. Again, it all comes from the same source, but just in terms of who's paying, who's paying that bill, that's my usual expectation. Is that not the case?
Mr. Carroll?
Madam Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, give me just a couple minutes here to pull that up. I don't want to misspeak on that,
Okay.
on that question. I feel like it's a little bit higher, but
Okay, thank
I'll
you.
get you the data.
Other questions? Yeah, Senator Rothfuss, or excuse me, Senator Scott.
Madam Chairman, am I right in thinking, we've got both this bill and House Bill 18 in front of us. Am I right in thinking if we proceed with this bill, we don't need to proceed with House Bill 18? It would be a duplicate.
Mr. Carroll? Or Ms. Maloney, either one?
Madam Chairman, Senator Scott, that might be a question better for the representative in terms of, what the desire is there for both bills to proceed. If one didn't make it to the finish line, would the other one provide, some support there? So I'm not sure that I'm the best person to answer that question.
Representative Andrew, you want to come up and give that one a chance while we're pulling up data and making everything murkier? Go ahead.
Madam Chairwoman, House Bill 18 might have something to do with the difference in the fiscal note because we added that to House Bill 235. So it will cost more than the original. And so I think that's part of what we're dealing with here. And we decided to, we dealt with House Bill 18 first. It was a committee bill. And then eventually we got to House Bill 235 and added the effects of that. So I guess that's just a decision for you guys on how much you like House Bill 235. I think, we decided to keep pushing them both forward in case one were not to pass, although I think we passed both of them unanimously in the House. So just wherever you want to. One of them has to go. They can't both pass, so.
Okay, well, that's good information, good information. Anything else?
Madam Chairman, if I
Yes.
might add just a little more color there. The fiscal impact from House Bill 18, which is also part of this bill, which basically increases that minimum level of funding for small districts, the impact for that alone is $284,000 per year. And that is, there's a little bit of that, looks like almost 10,000, that would be on the recapture side.
And am I correct, and either one of you can answer this, that the House Bill 18 then has, the appropriation is kind of geared more towards the small schools? So, okay.
Madam Chairwoman, yes.
Yes.
The effect of House Bill 18 is that it provides a floor for the amount of CTE funding that would be available to schools based on, and the purpose of that is to help small schools.
Okay. Okay. Other questions? All right. Super. I can't think of anything else, so, yep, oh wait, Senator Office isn't quite done yet, so, go ahead.
I did see a note in the fiscal note discussing the fact that this is expected to be part of a standard budget of the department. I think moving forward is how that would be funded, as opposed to when it's in the model, it's literally guaranteed. So I see a difference in how it's budgeted, where it would be subject to effectively budget cuts and recommendations by the department moving forward as a part of a budget, even if it's standard budget, as opposed to currently entirely in the model, it's guaranteed under all circumstances. Was that intentional, or is that just a construct of how this was created?
Representative Andrew, do you have an answer for that, or?
Madam Chairwoman, I believe it's the second one, as a construct of how it was drafted. Certainly not my intention to have this ever be lowered. I think it should be a guarantee as well.
Department of Ed, do you have any follow-up on that question? Okay, yeah, Senator Office.
And this might not see a problem. As you contemplate future ECAs, I was just thinking through whether the ECA would roll into it appropriately, even though it was part of the department budget instead of the model. I think it still does, because it's calculated based on the FTE as 29%, since 29% of the X value there is going to go up with the ECA. I think it works. I guess look to Trent. Is that going to work out just fine with an ECA in the future if this goes forward?
Mr.
Madam
Chair?
Chairman, Senator Office, yes, and I believe there's language in here that in fact requires us to do exactly that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for your testimony. Appreciate the clarification. I needed that. All right, let's go ahead and open it up for anyone that would like to come forward and testify on House Bill 235. Please come forward and introduce yourself. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you on House Bill 235. My name is Jeff Stone. I was a CTE educator for 34 years, mostly here in Laramie County 1. I was a teacher for 10 years and finished my career 24 years as the Career and Tech Ed coordinator in Laramie 1. And I was on board and worked with several committees, focus groups, the study group in 2002 and 2003 when this, the 29% was first created. And I can tell you that our biggest concern then, we thought it was a great success that, CTE was given the 29%, but our fear was if it wasn't categorized, that there would be too much flexibility and, possibly the funding wouldn't reach supplies, materials, and equipment. And after administering the funds for Laramie 1 for 24 years, I really realized that was true and had conversations with the finance department in Laramie 1 at the time on multiple occasions. And the flexibility was there, that oftentimes it didn't get to supplies, materials, and equipment. And, just as coordinator, trying to keep the CTE programs up to date and chasing after technology and how rapid industry changes, that was frustrating, and to always feel like you were behind in providing those things for our students. And, I'm on the Skills USA board for 27 years, still active in that, and have an opportunity to talk to folks around the state, other people that administer CTE funds, and it seemed to be true in other districts too, that because it was not categorized specifically, that folks were getting further and further behind. And so I would just encourage you to consider that, to keep up pace. In no time in history has industry been reaching out to education and saying, how can we help? And I think it would be a disservice to our industry partners to not keep up with them when they're reaching out to us for help. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Stone? Yes, go ahead, Senator Scott.
Two questions. One, do you have any feeling as to where the money was going when it wasn't reaching the CTE, or is it just disappear into the inner workings of the district? And second question, could you give us a few examples when you did get the money, what sort of things it went for?
Mr.
Sure,
Stone?
Madam Chair. It's all speculation. I was not in the finance department on where those funds were spent elsewhere. Lots of people had ideas, and, operating a school district, as you know, there's a lot of demands on the school district's finances. So it's really hard to say where those funds were going. When it did work is when it was that program's opportunity to spend the funds. I know in Laramie 1, I would put the programs on a rotation, and because we had 9 CTE programs and over 100 classes, it might be 8 or 9 years before it was your turn to spend the money. And so when it was your turn, you got updated and possibly even were in step with industry. But in 8 or 9 years, being current goes away pretty fast.
Good question. Follow up? Go ahead.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, and what sort of things are you actually using it for? I need a concrete example or two to get my mind wrapped around this one.
Madam
Mr.
Chair, CTE is so diverse. Computers for computer programming, welders, welding program, equipment in our wood shops and construction programs, culinary arts, healthcare. All these programs have specific material supplies that they need for, to teach the curriculum for those students. And so a lot of it's equipment, a lot of it is supplies, that goes with the curriculum. And of course, technology is a big one in all of those CTE areas. Every year, there's a new piece of technology that we would love to be teaching the kids, but keeping up pace with that is really difficult, especially if the funds you thought you had categorized were not there.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Stone? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much for your time.
Anyone else would like to testify, please come forward. Welcome, please introduce yourselves, even though we may know you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Kelly Little, and I represent the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming. Madam Chairwoman, with your blessing, I'd like to speak to both bills right now, if that's okay with you. In regards to House Bill 18, I want to commend the Joint Interim Committee for their work, really reviewing the policy with a fine-tooth comb to kind of pinpoint where improvements can be made. We do think that goal was reached here, and we support the bill. I think it really would help small schools to have this expanded funding and flexibility that way. We do support House Bill 235. Agency of Wyoming's always been slightly uncomfortable with the way the system works with the money going through the block grant model and schools being able to kind of absorb that funding into other areas. We do think with our workforce development efforts that partnering with the state in good faith to really make these programs successful, that having this money siloed and specifically used for equipment and supplies for CTE programs is the best way to go. So with that, Madam Chairwoman, I would stand for questions.
Questions for Ms. Little? Okay, thank you so much. Welcome.
Good
Please
morning,
introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chairman. My name is Erin Taylor, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. If with your pleasure, I would like to do the same thing. I represent the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees, and of course, you know the work that the colleges are doing in this space. The needs of the workforce start in K-12, and so for that reason, we are supportive of the efforts. The policy call is on your end. I won't speak to that decision that you need to make, but just supporting the CT efforts is definitely where we'll be. We commend the efforts of the committee over the interim to look at this. I would just submit to you the work's not over. Industry, I just got stopped today in the hallway saying, what can we do? How can we, let's think outside the box. How can we either right-size the funding for CTE, make things easier for partnerships, whatever that looks like, what can we do? So I would just submit to you, I appreciate the work that you've done. These are some good ideas here, and what can we do in the future? Let's keep working together. So with that, Madam Chairman, thank you.
Questions for Ms. Taylor? I have just one. How many folks do you suppose that go on to the junior colleges have actually been in a CTE program, the good share of them, or is it something like they just start when they get to college, or do you have any idea on that?
Madam Chairman, that's a great question. I probably don't know the answer to that. I could find that out. I know that in a lot of the districts, the colleges partner, with those courses, so they probably are coming in with some experience. I know the backlog in many of the K-12 districts is significant, and so they may not have the opportunity until they get to the community college.
Okay, other questions? Senator Scott?
Well, Madam Chairman, on that point, I know my district, there's some coordinated programs between the high schools and the community college. Where the student starts in a program in high school and continues it right on in community college.
Okay. Other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you for the information. Thanks. Other testimony from anyone in the room? All right. We actually have a couple on, oh, whoops. Well, I knew there would be some more coming up here before I started online. Just, they were a little slow on the mark here this morning. Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. Madam Chair, I'm afraid we're predominantly in opposition to the bill, though with one amendment, I think we probably could be okay with that. That amendment would be on page 4 at line 19, striking beginning at amounts through the remainder of that line, striking all of line 20 and line 21. This is the language specifically that creates a categorical grant. And Madam Chair, the reason I suggest this is I'm afraid we're putting the cart before the horse in this discussion. There's a presumption about nefarious uses of CTE funds. But Madam Chairman, just by way of example, I will tell you that the model absolutely does not fund middle school, junior high, career and technical education. So if the funds are restricted for the purpose for which they are distributed, which is here, 9 through 12 CTE, you could effectively be ending middle school CTE. Do we know whether the funds that are not spent on 9 through 12 CTE are being used to fund middle school CTE? The first part of this bill says let's study it, and we're presuming nefarious uses, but wouldn't it be good to actually have that information before deciding whether or not the categorical grant is appropriate? So Madam Chairman, if you want to do the study part, you want to take the look at everything, we commend that. We think that it's a good idea to understand what's happening with career and technical education. But I would suspect that you'll find a whole variety of uses of funds. So this is talking about, are they expended within the category for which they are appropriated? So middle school, junior high, career and technical education is in many places funded through funds that have to come from somewhere else because it's not funded by the model. So if it's from some of these funds, if they're funding middle school CTE, then by categorizing this, you effectively kill middle school CTE. Similar to that, there are programs that are partnerships with colleges and such as BOCES programs. And those partnerships with the community colleges may be the way that money is being used to pay for CTE programs. And then this funding would essentially supplement the BOCES program. But if this becomes categorical, then none of those dollars go to that partnership with the community college. None of those dollars go to the partnership of the BOCES, and you can effectively diminish the capacity to cooperate with those higher education institutions. And so I think it's wise to study, but to go ahead and suggest that we already know that there are bad reasons or bad purposes for what the money's being used is presumptive. And I think if you spend the time to study and to look into CTE, to know where those dollars actually do get spent, you'll find that those are generally going to support other areas of student interests. Another thing that they could potentially be going to is supporting the trips that the kids go on. These CTE programs go to competitions. They go on trips to compete. And if the funds are going to that, that's not supplies and materials and equipment. But again, we would be diminishing student opportunities because we are saying that it must be spent within a certain category without full understanding of where dollars are actually spent. So the first part of the bill says study it, find out, understand it, and then if you need to, come back with that categorical grant. But the categorical grant piece is premature because you're presuming an understanding without actually knowing the purposes for what the funds are used.
Questions for Mr. Farmer? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Boyd Brown, Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of School Administrators. Just a couple more things to add with that. I won't repeat a lot of the things that he said. Just a reminder that the block grant and the funding model is a resource allocation. It is not a spending model. Thinking about how it works, you have to be pretty close to the prototypical school for it to work out exactly. We do appreciate that we do get extra money, the percentage, the 29% for supplies and materials in the areas of CTE. And I will tell you, as being a superintendent, much like Mr. Stone talked about, sometimes you use that money for different programs across your district. And that includes our junior high programs as we look at it. I don't recall when I was the superintendent here, that we had a problem with not getting enough money to those programs at times. We'll never have enough money to keep up with the technology and those things that we need to with industry. Each one of the districts that I've worked in, and as I've told you in the past, I've worked in the largest and smallest district and across the state. We've worked with our local people to see what we could do. Again, we can't be everything to everyone out there. We try to do the best that we can. Part of what we do is try to get kids to have good work ethic in all of our courses and things across. One of the things that is interesting in CTE is that you have to have a sequence of courses for you to be able to spend that money as well. And so that is probably one of the areas. If you're a small district and you have a single course somewhere, you're spending some of the supplies and materials money on that as well. But the idea of making it a categorical is not a good area to go into, and I know that there are other bills out there working on that as well, but I think your consultants would tell you that it's a block grant and should stay a block grant, and we should be able to use it as a block grant. And with that, I'll answer questions.
Questions for Mr. Brown?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Boyd, can you talk a little bit about your middle school and their CTE endeavors over your career? I assume they had robust programs also that aren't funded through the model, but I don't know that.
Mr. Brown?
Would you repeat the question? I didn't catch the end of it.
I just said I assume that they had robust programs at your middle schools and junior highs as well in CTE, but I don't know that. If you could talk a little bit about your experience.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Senator Rothfuss, yes. I would tell you that in the small district that I worked in, the CTE programs that were available to our junior high students were the exact same ones that we had for our high school students. We had one CTE teacher and then one person who taught some other classes that we could consider CTE as well as working with our local community college to allow our students to take some online courses or possibly even go up and take some courses at that community college. And I would tell you that we had agreements across multiple community colleges, even in the small district, to allow some of our kids to move forward in programs. In the two larger districts that I was in, again, the same thing, had very robust, we had small engines that worked right into our automotive programs. We had different types of woodworking programs that would work right into our construction tech, all of the different high-tech like robotics, computer programming. So trying to get those students involved and give them the opportunity to see if they're interested in those programs at the junior high level so that they could be much more structured as they went into their high school 9 through 12 programs. So yeah, very robust programs at the junior high and middle level.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify? Please come forward.
Good
Welcome.
morning, Madam Chairman. Rennie McKay, Wyoming Business Alliance. Really appreciate you having this discussion as we kicked this off last week. And last week when I chatted with you about the Business Alliance and our members, talked a lot about workforce. And so just to highlight one issue, and that is, I think you know this, but Wyoming is the second least sticky state in the country. We lose more of our residents who are born here than every other state except West Virginia. And as we talked about workforce, we have a huge need right now for people, for the economy to grow, for employers to find the talent they need. So there's an opportunity for young people in Wyoming today, and it's just matching them up with the opportunities here and them seeing a future for themselves here. And I think that the career tech education programs really do help with that because we do have so many opportunities to work right out of high school or very quickly after the college. And I think we're really making some great progress in stacking credentials so that if you did CTE in high school, you could easily add to that through your career quickly here in Wyoming and do great things. I will just say that the Business Alliance is in favor of House Bill 235 and House Bill 18. Anything to do to supplement those programs are important. And I'll just say, my daughter's in junior high here in this district, and she just did the sewing program and loved it. And so that does scare me, right? That there could be unintended consequences for future kids. And so I hope, I know you will be thoughtful in how you approach this, but I'll just say the reason that I think we're so supportive of this is that I don't think it's nefarious. Maybe those sewing machines that my daughter just used were purchased using $9 through $12 for that equipment. But the challenge we're facing is that when we've talked to, and I work with the Career Technical Education Association, we talk to those teachers, they're having to spend their own dollars. They can't get the equipment that they need. So I think you just heard some great testimony about what's happened here, but elsewhere in Wyoming, you've got students paying out of their own pocket for supplies and materials, and then you have teachers. And they also have private industry. Private industry is putting a lot of dollars into CTE equipment. But what is not happening is we're not unlocking the grants. So all you have to do is categorize and spend according to this, and then you're eligible for grants, right? So when we talk about not having access to ever catch up, well, there's a grant program for that, but you have to spend the proper amount on materials and report it. And that's why there's already reporting in place. That's why we already know how much is going to materials in 9 through 12 because it's categorized. And so what's just hit me is hearing from teachers who had to pay out of their own pocket dollars for equipment, hearing from industry who's putting money into districts that aren't eligible for the grants. So something's got to change because we have so much opportunity right now, and to just be falling behind in terms of having access for those teachers and those students to get to the grant dollars if we could, right? That would be what you all set up for a program. You set up a great carrot, but somehow we're just not getting there. So I don't know if you have any ideas on better tweaking this, but just you set up a great grant program. It's helpful. It's just it's not being used because districts aren't qualifying for it. And they instead turn and put this on the back of individual, both teachers, students, and private industry. And private industry is going to keep putting dollars in. They give away a lot of equipment to schools because this is so important to them and their future for their companies to grow. So thanks for taking this topic on. I know it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to come to ask you about this and have fear about unintended consequences. But I know you all are going to be deliberative in this and get to a good place. And thank you for looking at this and how much you have done for CTE through the years. So thank you.
Questions for Mr. McKay? Thank you so much. Appreciate your testimony. Go ahead, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jessie Defoe, and I represent the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education. Again, want to thank the work over the interim. We just walked through House Bill 17 last week, and so just to kind of hopefully help capture all the comments that have happened along the way thus far, I appreciate Mr. McKay's comments with the grant program. When I first started with WACD, that was one of the first things we looked at, is we said, we don't have enough for supplies. What can we do? And so that's when that grant program was created, to say, hey, if you spend this much, we will then unlock more funds. And so we were hopeful that that would have that outcome. It has not yet. So as of Friday, thank you again for passing that on to the Senate chambers, to where we at least up the amount that they can apply for at that. Then we had something interesting where we had House Bill 18 and House Bill 235. And that's where I think a lot of the appropriation and that is coming from, is because House Bill 18 was taken and then put into 235. So that's where we have raised the floor minimum for those small districts, so that it would either be the $9,428.77 or the $18,857, whichever is greater of the two. So that's to help those really small districts who just don't generate the funding that they need for the programs, because whether you are in Meeteetse or Cheyenne, that equipment's going to cost the same. So what can we do to help the small districts? So both these are important pieces of legislation, but then it creates a little bit of a challenge when I'm asking for more money. And that's part of the reason why we are looking so diligently at this categorization of the funds. So when you look at through the rest of the statutes, other classes don't generate extra funding. This 29% is only because of the high school CTE classes, because they know that they cost so much more. And when you go back to the study of 2002, which I have extra copies of and happy to give it to you, the middle schools did not generate enough at the time, the consultants thought, to demand that extra funding. So that's why it was only specifically through 9 through 12. And that's why we're appealing you today to look at the 9 through 12, because that's our immediate workforce, knowing that 60% of the open jobs in Wyoming are CTE related. So what can we do with that? We've already kind of gone through some of the things where it's been the same code for 20 years. We're not asking school districts to report any differently. The amendments in the House says the money flows through the exact same way. So it's not like they now have to apply for a grant or anything like that. They receive the money just as they would have. There's also nothing saying that you can't hold on to those funds to then purchase large equipment in coming years, because we know some school districts need to do that. That's great. We just ask that you actually spend it for those funds and to have the flexibility. I think that the intent of the flexibility is more, did we want to buy the industrial oven or the new welding equipment this year? Right now, we are overspending about 10 million in activities, and we're underspending 1.6 in CTE. So you could still fully fund CTE and overspend in activities about 8.4 million. Some other things to consider with this is what it looks like in the communities. And I just want to share a few examples. I know that you have other legislation to get to and folks who would like to testify, but here's some ideas of what this looks like on the ground. A high school north of us is using outside money to support materials and supplies while only utilizing 30% of their allocated funding. They are turning away students. Budgets are very low, 3,000 to 5,500, and one program averages 24 students but only has 12 welding booths. They need new equipment for students to weld, but it's not getting budgeted. Another school to the west of the previously mentioned high school said their program received 4,500 for the year. They have to get donations from the community and out-of-state support to make it work. Not nearly enough for their woods, their AutoCAD, and machining. So right now, this teacher has $35 left for the year and 9 projects to complete. This program also doesn't spend their total allocated funds. This one was the most concerning to us. A high school south of the last example has 5 industrial tech programs. They can only teach 250 to 270 students a year, but get 3,000 requests from 1,400 students. All students have to pay for materials, supplies, and consumables to weld and do wood shops. Some equipment dates back to the 1980s. They are only using 12% of their materials and supply funds when getting outside entities to pay for materials. Every student is paying for materials, supplies, and equipment, while the state is paying the district. It's really hard for us to ask for more money for CTE when it shows that we're not spending the money on CTE, but we know there's the demand for CTE. So again, this is the question for you to deliberate. How do we show that the money needs to go to these programs so that then when I do come back and ask for more funds for junior high, for other places, that we can show that it's actually being spent where it's supposed to? This is for sure not the easy policy questions, but why we have you here to help represent these districts and just help us to work through a tough problem that's not going away, because we know the demand for CTE is increasing. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any and all questions.
Questions for Ms. Defoe? Senator Scott?
The question of the melding of House Bill 18 into House Bill 235, is it your judgment that that is successfully melded, and that if we pass 235, we get everything that 18 has to offer?
Yes, Madam Chairman, Senator Scott, yes, that is my understanding, is that hopefully, yep, that would cover both, and then 18 is kind of the backup, if you will, for those small school districts, because the 18 really focuses on small school districts.
Other questions for Ms. Defoe? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this bill? Yes, please come forward. Thought of some other things, haven't you? Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just have answers to some of the questions we've been wrestling with. So for the discrepancy in those dates, Senator Scott is absolutely right, and our staff has recommended an amendment on page 2, line 5, that should delete 2026 to 2027 and insert 2025 to 2026, and that would fix the bill in that regard. And for the mismatching of the fiscal note, that Senator Rothfuss was correct in that it all levels out when you get $800,000 more of recapture payments flowing into the SPF. And so considering the effects of House Bill 18, it should all be a wash in the amount this will cost us.
Any questions? Any questions on that? Okay, thank you for that clarification, appreciate it. All right, anyone else who would like to testify, please come forward.
Hello, my name is Mark Kepp, I'm a citizen of Crook County up in Sundance. There's a tidal wave coming towards the state in the form of AI, and even our current students are in big trouble. Most technical jobs, most jobs that operate behind a computer will be gone in 2 years. So training them in physical activities, plumbing, welding, trades that can't be replaced immediately is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. So if there's funding going towards that, I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you for making the trip down. Appreciate it. Anyone else in the room would like to testify? Okay. We have 2 online. I think they're still there.
Yes, Madam
Do you want to
Chairman.
bring them in?
Yep, Kelly Carpenter is joining the room now.
Okay.
Can you hear me
Welcome.
okay, Madam Chairwoman? All right, thank you. Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee, Kelly Carpenter, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. Thanks for the opportunity to join you virtually today. We're sitting in support of this bill, and if I may, as previous speakers have done, voice support for both bills at this time. Regarding House Bill 235, to echo sentiments of previous comments, it supports the agriculture industry and keeps our kids in the state by getting them into trades with good paying and demand jobs. Also, we appreciate that it makes sure the funds go to the programs as intended. I'd like to ditto previous speakers' comments as well regarding House Bill 18, as we are very supportive of smaller districts and more rural areas. I'll keep it brief, so thank you very much again, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Carpenter? Okay. No, thanks again, though, for sticking around. Appreciate it. Thanks for your
Thank you.
testimony. And bring in the next person.
Madam Chairman, Ellis Day is joining our room now.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam our Chairman Schuller. My name is Ellis Day, and I am here in support of this bill. I'm currently the industrial manager for Interstate Power Systems here in Gillette, and I also serve as the vice president on the Mining Association of Wyoming, and I was elected to serve on the Gillette College Board of Trustees, and I've spent the last 25 years working in the mining industry in Wyoming and Alaska. But wherever I've been in the world, I've always been able to call Wyoming as my home and had the opportunity to return again to Wyoming. I grew up on a working dairy farm in the small town of Bedford, Wyoming, and I attended Star Valley High School. There I was able to excel in FFA welding and ag mechanics. And in 1998, I moved with my new bride to Gillette, Wyoming, to Gillette to attend the diesel program at Gillette College. And it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. With the education that I received in high school and college in the CTE programs in welding and mechanics, it gave me a strong foundation to succeed in the chosen field that I've been able to participate in. We need to make sure that the next generation of tradesmen have the support needed to make them successful. This is one of the reasons that I choose to participate in the Mining Association of Wyoming and Gillette College. Students who learn a trade are more capable of raising a family, buying a home, and having a career. That increases the odds that they stay in Wyoming or return to Wyoming. These tools and materials are not cheap. I know that from firsthand experience, and the price of steel and welding consumables continues to increase. The funds that were intended for CTE materials, supplies, and equipment need to be spent on that. So our students in 9 through 12 have what they need to spend their time and be efficient. Currently, one of our local classes in the 9 through 12 grades have 22 students, just as referred previously, 24 students with 12 welding machines. This makes it difficult to manage a class and for them to learn when only half are able to weld at a time. We have to make sure that we are funding what is critical to our state, and right now we need CTE more than ever. This is about our next generation of skilled workers, and they are the ones that we need in our community. I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak and having the technology to be able to do so remotely, and continue to support this bill. Thank you very much. Any questions at this time?
Any questions for Mr. Day? Okay, thank you. And I do know where Bedford is, so you made
That's great.
a long trek across the state, but
Yeah.
thanks for what you do. We appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. If that's everyone on Zoom, we'll go ahead and close public testimony. And what's your pleasure on this bill?
Madam Chairman, move the bill.
Okay, it's been moved by the good Senator Scott. Potential amendments on this bill? I know we have one. Would you like to move that one, Senator Scott?
I'll move that one on
Okay.
page 2, line 5,
Okay.
delete 2026, 2027, 2025, and 2026.
Okay. Everybody got that? Ashley, did you get that?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Okay. So that'd be page 2, line 5. We're just going to delete 2026, 2027, and insert 2025, 26. Any discussion on that? I think that's a good catch. All right, all those in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that amendment is passed. Other amendments? Yes, go ahead, Senator Office.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I do have concern about the categorical grant aspect of it because of the limitation that you end up potentially seeing where we don't have anything in the model for funding for middle school and junior high school. I would imagine these resources are being used for that and for other purposes. And I'm worried about the language at the bottom of page 4 that makes it categorical. So I would move to strike the language, bottom of page 4, lines 19 through 21, beginning at amounts, to ensure that the funds can actually go where they're needed, not just where they're told.
Discussion on that amendment? Yes, yes, Senator
I'm
Scott.
against that amendment. It seems to me a good part of the purpose here is to see that the funds actually get to these high school programs that really do need them. I suspicion they're going for all kinds of district purposes that are not related to CTE, and the districts would be able to deal with junior high programs, which I don't think is nearly as expensive, perfectly well within the block grant. I think that this has just been used for a slush fund for not nefarious purposes, but activities, administration, whatever the current perceived emergency is. And I think CTE's been just systematically starved, and this is the remedy for it.
Other discussion? Senator Brennan?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I too am opposed to this amendment. I think that we're hearing loud and clear that we have a need for CTE to spend on CTE, and I know that this does lessen maybe some of the flexibility that's within the block grant, but with concerns to the 7th and 8th graders in the junior high, I think we need to look at that. In 2002, the consultants said it wasn't a high enough need. 2002 was a long time ago. I was in college. And so I think that we need to look at that. But I think if we have this in here and we know, okay, these are going, I think we might uncover what is needed in that 7th and 8th grade junior high. And I would strongly suggest that whether it be through the recalibration or in our committee next, in the interim, that we do need to look at the 7th and 8th grade CTEs and get these students maybe started on those, but I am opposed to just striking this language at this time.
Just a thought, and I don't know if you would consider this a friendly amendment, but what if we took on line 20, the shall, and made it into a should? Would that be considered a friendly amendment to your amendment?
Madam Chairman, I think so. I think it ends up serving the same purpose, but we don't use a lot of shoulds in
It's
statute.
usually mays or shalls, but I just
Exactly.
threw out should for the heck of it.
Yeah.
Just to,
Madam
yes.
Chairman, my other thought on this was to put a comment in there and then give maybe permission that if a district needed, that they could ask for an exception from the department, should they need to spend these funds somewhere else.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Sensing that amendment's not going to go well.
Should we just vote on it? And then ask for
No,
further
just,
amendment?
I'll withdraw it. There's no,
Okay.
I get the writing, but I will try one more that addresses that perhaps.
Okay.
If on page 4, line 21, before the period, you add the words "at any grade level," it would read, "Amounts distributed under this section shall only be expended on supplies, materials, and equipment for career and technical education programs at any grade level."
Okay.
At that point, it at least takes care of the use of it for middle school and junior high school. It might not provide full flexibility, but that certainly assuages one concern.
Okay.
I'd make that motion.
Any discussion on that amendment?
I can go for that.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and vote on that amendment then. Do you have that, Ashley?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Okay, all those in favor of that amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No? Okay. Okay, that amendment's passed. Any other potential amendments on this bill? Okay. Let's see any others. All right. If there are no other amendments, we'll go ahead and take roll on House Bill 235. Oh, whoops, hang on. Go ahead, Senator.
Just brief discussion. I support everything in this bill except for the fact that it is categorical and ahead of the recalibration. I guess I'm concerned that we start putting into statute categorical grants when this should really be looked at in a more flexible way in recalibration, in my opinion. So I agree that the 29% funding should be used for CTE. I think that's an accurate intent. And I certainly like the House Bill 18 provision of increasing it, so everything here is okay. But the challenge with creating categorical grants is that we don't fund everything through the current funding model appropriately as it is right now. We haven't adjusted the funding model in probably almost 20 years in terms of what it funds. So we know, for example, all districts spend a lot of money on school lunches. They get $0 for school lunches through the funding model. all districts spend money on insurance for their buildings. They get $0 for insurance on their buildings. Many districts use school resource officers, $0 in the model for school resource officers. So this idea that we can go to each component in the model and say, well, this one's really important, we should make it categorical. Every single component in the model is really important. Every one of them is essential for the operation of the school. And if we were to sit down and review them all individually, we'd make the entire model categorical, and the model would fail miserably. So while I support everything about this bill, I don't support the categorical aspect, and so I'll be a no on this bill.
Other comments on the bill? Okay. With that, let's go ahead and take roll then. Ashley?
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. House Bill 235, Career Technical Education Equipment and Supplies, do pass as amended. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Olson?
Excused?
Senator Rothfuss?
No.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Aye.
3 aye, 1 no, 1 excused.
Okay. That bill is passed. Would anybody like to volunteer to take this on the floor? We do have. Oh, okay. Yes, you are a sponsor. Okay. Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. Now, the big question is House Bill 18. Yes. Go ahead, Senator Scott, then Senator Rothfuss.
Madam Chairman, what I would suggest is that we lay House Bill 18 back, subject to the call of the chair. If something should happen to 235 upstairs, then we've got several more meetings. We've heard the testimony. We could roll 18 out and use it as a backup.
That's a suggestion that I was going to make if someone else didn't, but go ahead. Senator
And I
Rothfuss.
was actually just going to suggest that we move it, pass it, send it to the majority leader and say, don't put it on general file until necessary, and then it probably just dies in general file, but that simply to expedite it so that we've got it publicly announced and we don't have to re-announce it later and bring people in to testify. I thought that was an easier solution.
That's a good point.
They're
too.
basically equivalent.
Yeah, they're
Senator-
basically equivalent.
Senator
You
Brennan.
can do it either way.
I'm good with either one.
I am too.
Well,
I think
I'll
we're
just
ready
move
to
House,
move.
I move House Bill 18.
Okay. Let's, any discussion on
let's
House
pass
Bill
it.
18? No. Okay.
Let's pass it.
Let's go ahead and take a vote on House Bill 18. Senator Bennett, did you have something else you wanted to add? Okay.
Madam Chairman, on House Bill 18, Career Technical Education Funding, do pass. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Olson?
Excused?
Senator Rothfuss? Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Okay, aye.
4 aye, 1 excused.
All right. And I will visit with the leadership let them know our thoughts on that. So, all right. Thank you for those who testified on that bill. We've got one more today, House Bill 46. Oh, absolutely. Homeschool Freedom Act, and I believe we have Representative Straw. Do I say it? Is it
Strzok.
Straw. I'm sorry. It's Straw.
Fun.
Do you pronounce the O-C-K? It's Straw or Strzok?
I'm sorry.
Is it Strzok or Straw?
Strzok, S-T-R-O-C-K.
Okay.
So
Okay.
S-T Rock,
Okay,
Strzok.
ST Rock, okay. Again, not having worked with you, I'm not really familiar with how you say it.
No,
I
you're
don't want
fine. And if you need to know, it's Tommy, I get Tommy and Tony and everything but Tommy, so. So
Well, anyway,
we'll
welcome.
Clarify that one too, but thank
Okay,
you.
great. Well, tell us what you want us to know about Homeschool Freedom Act.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and members of the committee. I'm Representative Strzok from House District 6, and I'm here to present House Bill 46, and it's the Homeschool Freedom Act. So currently, under Wyoming law, homeschool parents are required to submit their curriculum to their local school board for approval. This bill repeals that requirement. This bill would give parents the right to educate their children at home without government overreach. So there are 11 states have never required this kind of notification, including Idaho, Texas, Illinois, Michigan, Iowa, Missouri. Wyoming would be joining them. Importantly, this bill would not change the way homeschool children participate in public school sports and activities, as Wyoming law already protects access of homeschoolers to these activities in statute 21-4-506. So pretty much it's really simple. Repeals takes it out, and that's about all this is. It's a quick, easy bill. So I appreciate your support in it. And thank you.
Thank you. You know what we say about quick, easy bills? They end up
Oh,
being very
I should not have said that.
Probably not have said that, but anyway.
Yes, it should be one, I
Okay.
would say, I would hope.
Okay,
So.
good. Questions from Ms. Straw? Yes, go ahead. Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. Just out of curiosity, do you know, was this language first put in when the Wyoming statutes were written, or was this, do you know when this language came in that we submit the paperwork, the intent to homeschool?
And
Ms. Straw?
thank you, Chairman. So my question, could I
Sure.
phone a friend?
Yeah, just
here?
please introduce
Yes,
yourself,
thank
and yeah, you can always call a friend here.
Chairwoman Schuler, members of the committee, my name is Jessie Rubino. I'm with the State Freedom Caucus Network. And I was going to co-present this with Representative Strzok, and I can address that question from Senator Brennan. I'll address that question first. So I was looking into the legislative history of the section that this seeks to repeal. And I know that it's been in there for many decades. I wasn't able to ascertain the exact year that it was added, but it's been in there for many, many, many decades. And if I may, I can provide a little bit more color on how this interplays with a couple of other pieces, if that's okay. So I am a product of public schools in Wyoming, born and raised here. I was actually a former public school teacher in Casper. So go Kelly Walsh Trojans. And I'm a public school advocate and a homeschool advocate. And over the summer and in the fall, Representative Strzok and I started talking about school choice and homeschool freedom. And we kind of came across this portion of statute and thought maybe it was something that we could work on. So that's where this bill came from. I want to just make 3 points about the bill. The first is I want to discuss how this bill interplays with House Bill 199. I know you all have that on your desk today for third reading. This bill would further cement the fact that there would be two different, segments of homeschool students in Wyoming. So there would be the traditional home-based education students who do not seek out an ESA. And then there would be ESA homeschool students who would have to comply with all of the requirements that are set out in the current ESA program, and that if 199 were to pass, any additions there. I want to address some concerns about neglect, and these concerns were raised when this bill was working its way through the House side. In some data shared by the Department of Family Services, there were 50 allegations of educational neglect specifically that they see annually. 25 or half of those end up being substantiated, and the department specified that they don't collect data that would go deep enough to say that whether or not these allegations came from this homeschool curriculum reporting requirement. They did say, though, that most of these allegations come from instances of students failing to meet the truancy requirements of public schools. So I just want to point out that Wyoming's truancy statutes, the homeschool statutes are an exemption to those truancy laws that already exist. And so investigating educational neglect and truancy, those statutes, in my opinion, are more tailored toward determining if a student is being neglected in terms of not meeting the truancy standards for public education. Another abuse point that was brought up on the House side was that this bill would complicate the state's compliance with the Federal Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. I did a deep dive into that federal law, and the law doesn't mention homeschool curriculum. It's actually a data collection statute, and so there shouldn't be any issues there with the federal law if that's a concern for this committee. And the only other piece that I would share is some information about achievement. Some might say that this curriculum requirement would ensure that students are achieving academic success at home. And I'd like to remind you what Representative Strzok shared earlier. There's 11 states that do not require this kind of notification. One of them is Texas. And in 50% of peer-reviewed studies in Texas, academic achievement among homeschool students was far outperformed their public school counterparts. And nationwide, 78% of peer-reviewed studies on academic achievement show homeschool students perform statistically significantly better. There were 2 peer-reviewed studies that I was able to find, one from 2013 and one from 2010, that the degree of state control and regulation of homeschooling has no relation to academic success and achievement. So with those little pieces, I would be happy to stand for any questions. Otherwise, I know we have a lot of folks here that are happy to talk about the bill.
questions for either one? Yeah, Senator Scott.
This report that's being repealed here, are you, either one of you, aware of any instance where actual use has been made of these reports in recent years?
Representative?
Sorry. Thank you, Chairwoman. I have not. There's, as far as I know, and, and even in my county, I've not heard of any. So.
Any other questions for the representative or Ms. Rubino?
And Ms. Chairwoman, if I can add to that, a lot of times these curriculums that are submitted, they're often placed on a consent list for the local school boards to vote on. And from what I can tell, they're not discussed, deliberated, they're placed on a consent list and just kind of sent away.
Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. So it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that this is also the point at which the information is transacted between a parent and the district. In other words, this is like the announcement that, hey, there is a student here that is homeschooling the district, and that the curriculum goes along with that, and that there'd be no other communication. I was wondering, in looking at the other, I think you said 11 states that have this type of policy where they remove the curriculum requirement, if there was any informational requirement just saying, hey, we're a resident of this district, we're homeschooling our children, end of engagement. Do you know if that is available anywhere else?
Representative?
Thank you, Chairman. I would say no, there doesn't seem to be. It's intending for thing. They're able to just go about being a parent, and I think sometimes we forget who owns these children. It's not the government, it is the parents. And so it gives them that freedom to parent and to educate as they would like.
Okay. And
Yeah, follow up, go ahead.
yeah, Madam Chairman, on that, I do know that a lot of homeschool parents do utilize some resources of their school districts for activities and even partial enrollment. I'm not entirely sure if that is a part of this process, the engagement, or if there are other processes that are in place to allow for that. I guess I was wondering if that had been contemplated, the engagement with the district where there's a desire by the parent to utilize, we'll say, activities as an example.
Representative, any
Thank you,
idea on
Chairwoman.
that?
And I will defer to
Okay.
Ms.
Ms. Rubino?
Rubino on that.
Chairwoman Schuler, Senator Rothfuss, that's a great question, and I'm glad that you asked that. So Wyoming Statute 214506 discusses participation by homeschool students in public school activities. And so I can just provide a little summary and read a little bit of that, but that provides that any school-age child who is a resident of a school district, who is not under suspension or expulsion, and who's not enrolled, so i.e. is a homeschool student or a private school student, shall be permitted by the district to participate in activities which are sanctioned by the High School Activities Association, subject to the following. And there are 3 specific little caveats there. So the first piece that you asked about, Senator Rothfuss, the district may require the student to pay any fees for participation. The district may charge that student an additional fee for participating, but shall not be any more than any fee participating charged to full-time students of the district. And then as a condition of participation, this is the third one, the student shall be required to comply with other rules and policies of the district. So none of those 3 pieces reference back to this notification of curriculum statute, so it doesn't really have any impact on participation in sports. That third prong, the thing that comes to mind for me is it's discussing like a sports physical and things like that.
Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, and it's my experience, and I'm going to ask you, is the general experience that the school districts in this state have really been very good about allowing homeschool children to participate in activities and to sometimes even take a academic class or 2 in the schools. Is that your impression as well?
Representative?
Yes, thanks, Chairwoman. And Senator Scott, yes, I would agree with that. I do not have I have not heard anyone really, that's not been an issue. So thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. Let's go ahead and open it up to the public, unless the Department of Ed wants to jump on first. We always have to give you guys first deference, right? That's why you sit in the front row, right? Correct?
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman, committee members, Dickie Shaner, speaking on behalf of State Superintendent Degenfelder. She is in support of this bill.
Okay. She see any issues, Mr. Shaner, with not requiring the districts to have a curriculum or anything else?
She does not.
Okay. Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Again, the only concern that I have, and it's probably not a major concern, but is honestly knowing who's out there, so to speak. And this eliminates any informational aspect of somebody saying we're homeschooling in the state of Wyoming in this district. Is that information that the department feels is useful and helpful if we had an informational provision, or is that just not worth the trouble in the eyes of the superintendent?
Mr. Shaner?
Yeah. Madam Chair, through you, Senator Rothfuss, I believe they still have to notify the school district that they're homeschooling. They just don't have to give them the curriculum.
Madam Chairman,
No,
I
Senator
thought
Rothfuss.
this was it, actually. I thought this was the engagement. I see different head shakes in the audience here, which is really, that's always the most awkward time, when you have both heads. You've got this going and you've got this going, then we have no idea what's going on. So we'll look into that more.
Okay, yeah, Madam Chair, I'm just looking at 21.4.102 subsection C. I think that would still stay in statute because this just amends B.
Well, Senator Rothfuss is really fast on the phone, so he'll probably have that statue up.
I agree. I think that it's not repealed or anything, is it?
No, nope, it's not.
Agreed.
So
So Senator Brennan?
for clarification, so that I'm tracking along, what does C say? Because I'm not as
So,
fast on the phone as you.
C, in addition to subsection A of this section, the parent, guardian, or other person having control or charge of any child under the age of 18 who has not otherwise notified the district of enrolling that district in a different school district or in a private school or home-based educational program shall meet in person with the school district counselor or administrator to provide the school district with written consent to the withdrawal of that student from the school attendance. So the implication there is that they have to, well, actually, they'd only have to do it one time technically, so it would be a single moment of information, and it would effectively be saying, yeah, we'll homeschool, and then there's no further data collection. So I would say that there is a single moment of data collection, but that in an ongoing basis, there's no knowledge of continuation based on how that's structured, and without the B provision then.
Okay. Does that answer that question for everybody in the room, hopefully? Okay.
And it does look like these laws are from 1907, by the way.
Wow.
That came
Come a
up.
long ways,
Yeah.
haven't we? Yeah, we have.
Madam
Senator Brennan?
Chairwoman, 1907, I believe that it was like in 1984, 85, when homeschooling became legal in the state of Wyoming.
I think there were amendments, but the amendments seem to have been to the C paragraph as opposed to this B paragraph.
Fascinating.
It's
We're slightly, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the original provision 21.4.102 seems to be from 1907, but I don't know. It's a little unclear how much it's been amended.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I digress, so.
Oh, no worries.
We're getting a little
Thank you,
history
Madam
lesson
Chairman.
today while we're here, so. Welcome. Would you like to testify in this bill? Please tell us who you are, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Chelsea Collier. I'm from Campbell County. I'm an educator. I was a nanny for the Rothfuss family in college. It's good to see you. I hope the boys are doing good. Great. And so anyway, I'm here today I'm a homeschooling parent. I also participate in a co-op in Campbell County, and I'm so thankful for those opportunities that we have the freedom in Wyoming to participate in those. And every child in Wyoming deserves to have an education that's tailored to their needs. And I believe giving parents the opportunity to have the freedom to educate their child in whatever means necessary, that they should be allowed to do that. I also teach as a public school educator online. I'm part of a virtual academy. And I really think that I hear from parents that We just need to give them the reins here. We don't need to keep taking back what we've granted them. And so I've actually filled out this paper at the school district before I did any of the other opportunities. And it really is not a burden to me. I think there are some families that see it as a nuance. And so I would urge you to please vote your eye on this bill, because I think that we should give parents the right to choose for every child what their education should be. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Questions for Ms. Collier? Okay, thank you. Who's next? Please come forward. Yeah, we can fill up all the chairs. Keep it coming.
Thank you, Chair
introduce
Schuler
yourself.
and members of the Senate Education Committee. My name is Will Estrada. I'm Senior Counsel at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and it's a privilege to come and speak in support of HB 46. First off, 1907 was when the compulsory attendance statute was passed. 1984 was when the current home-based education statute was passed. So I'm a homeschool graduate. I'm a homeschool dad. HB 46 number 1 is good for public schools. We heard from the superintendent's office that they support. My dad spent 37 years as a public school special ed teacher in New York and Pennsylvania. This bill will ease a burden, a paperwork burden that does really nothing as far as education of children for the public schools. They won't need to worry about FERPA, potential disclosures of information. So it reduces the workload on our hardworking public schools. Second, HB 46 is good for homeschoolers. As a homeschool graduate and a homeschool dad myself, this extra paperwork burden may seem small, but we've seen numerous instances where we've had to defend homeschool families in Wyoming from school districts saying, no, you have to use our form. It's a tension, it's a stressor, and it's really unnecessary. As we heard from the other testimony, there are 11 states, these are blue states, these are red states, Texas, Illinois, New Jersey, others, where there is no reporting requirement whatsoever. I would say in response to some of the questions, if you are withdrawing a child from public school, you would still need to notify the school district in writing that you're doing that withdrawal. But for families whose kids never went to public school, they would not need to do this. And finally, number 3, this bill, HB 46, is passed by the House, is good for freedom. We hear a lot of discussion about freedom. It's precious. I value it. Wyoming has led in freedom. You had the bills last year with school choice. You have the strong fundamental parental rights statute codified at Wyoming statute section 14-2-206, and this bill would continue to send a message making Wyoming the 12th state where there's no requirement that families file with the school district. So respectfully ask for your support for HB 46 as passed by the House.
Questions for Mr. Estrada? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Who's next?
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, honorable members of the committee. Thank you for taking time today to hear this testimony on House Bill 46, and I do urge your support of this bill. My name is Brenna Lowry. I reside in Laramie County, where I have homeschooled my 5 children for the past 25 years. My experience with amending the statute comes from those 25 years of yearly reporting to the school district. In addition to that, I also serve as president since 2023 for Homeschool Wyoming, and have been on the board since 2018. I feel like the time is right to repeal this regulation that has no reason in this statute that makes no sense. The school board has no authority to approve or disapprove the curriculum, and as has been stated before, it's just a hoop to jump through and some bureaucratic strings attached with both sides that really serve no purpose. So I would urge you to pass this. We've seen an increase, a near doubling in homeschooling in the past 5 years, since COVID especially. It's leveled out a little bit, but during that time, we've had families reach out with confusion over what is actually required by the school districts based on, as Will had spoken, Mr. Estrada had spoken, there's extra forms that are sent. Sometimes the language is confusing that is sent back. The school districts sometimes utilize language as they approve the curriculum, or thank you for your application to homeschool, and that's in Powell or Park County. We've had districts offer to supply teacher training for homeschooling, which is really an administrative burden that the homeschool or the school districts don't need to bear. In Laramie County, where I have homeschooled, and also Albany, they use the word approved. So as I said, I think those are all unnecessary. It causes a disruption or a misunderstanding between some homeschool families, especially the new ones. Once you get the hang of it, you realize it's not that big of a deal, but it's unnecessary. Some of the other administrative burdens or costs, the letters in Laramie County were sent certified mail. That's an extra burden. With the passage of Parental Rights Amendment in 2017, we know that Wyoming values the care, custody, and education of their children by parents. So I would assume that this rolls back the strings to the school district and puts this squarely back on in the hands of, or the laps of the parents. And so I urge you for this, that Wyoming could join those 11 states and be one of the free.
Questions for Ms. Lowry? Senator Scott?
Yes, Madam Chairman. You testified that you thought that the homeschooling had about doubled in the state in the past 5 years. Do you have any estimate as to how many homeschoolers there are in Wyoming currently? That is children.
Ms. Lowry?
Right. I did kind of look back at that data. I don't have a clear picture, but it's between 5,000 and 6,000 families that homeschool. And I don't know that number includes, is that number delineating the children in the families in Wyoming. We are one of the smaller, and some of that data is national. The doubling has been national as well, and Wyoming followed that trend. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
That's what COVID did, I guess, huh?
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Scott.
That would give roughly 10% of the school-age children in the states being homeschooled.
Close.
No, we're not, we're about 90,000.
It's about 90,000, so.
90,000.
90,000, so.
Yeah,
Five to 6,000.
So it'd have to be about 9,000 before it'd be 10, so a little less than that, but yeah. My math's not real good, but. Questions, any other questions for Ms. Lowry? Okay, thank you for your testimony. We're kind of closing in on time, so if you could kind of just keep it to a couple minutes from here on out, just so we want to make sure we have time to work the bill a little bit. So, thank you, though.
Madam Chair, honorable members of the committee, my name is Dr. Douglas Peterson. I'm a homeschool dad here in Laramie County. I'm also a education services provider and consultant to education families and an education researcher with a focus on home education. I'm speaking today in support of House Bill 46 for a number of reasons, but not on behalf of any organization with which I'm affiliated. Like most who consider themselves conservative, I'm a proponent of smaller government, reducing bureaucratic inefficiencies and eliminating pointless red tape. This requirement for home educating families to submit paperwork annually to the local school districts, which cannot be legally approved or disapproved, but only acknowledged, is the epitome of pointless. It represents the stereotypical inefficiency of government operations that exists only because it has existed for an extended period of time, and it continues to exist solely for that reason. Not only does this requirement not do anything, it carries with it a faulty assumption that if parents were not required to do it, that they would also not see to the education of their children. By way of an example, I submitted paperwork for my children up until the point where they reached the maximum compulsory schooling age, and after which I ceased to submit the paperwork, but I didn't cease to teach my children. One graduated in 2022, the other is on track to graduate this year. I would like you to just simply consider this. An Ohio Supreme Court decision in 1976 declared it has long been recognized that the right of a parent to guide the education, including the religious education of his or her children, is indeed a fundamental right. So I ask this committee and the whole legislative body to affirm that fundamental right by removing this useless requirement, which only consumes time for both the home educating families and the school districts for no discernible purpose or positive impact on educational outcomes. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Who's next?
My name is Jordan Emerson. I'm a homeschool dad. My wife and my girls are all beautiful sitting back there. I'm also a pastor here in Cheyenne at Calvary Chapel, South Cheyenne. We moved to Colorado, and one of the determining reasons was because we wanted to see our kids through in homeschooling till the time they graduate. And we came over legally from Colorado. So, so just let it be known it was legal. And our goal was to move to a state that respects our God-given rights to self-govern and our rights to raise and school our daughters, our children in a state that respects our God-ordained institution as a family. The purpose of the state or government is to protect our rights to self-govern, to punish those who will not govern themselves under what is good, true, and virtuous, as defined by God in the Bible. Therefore, until those laws as defined by God's moral law are broken, the state should have no influence on the family and what is taught in the home. As an example, I will not give a full sermon. So this is
That's
from
good. We don't
1
have time for
Peter,
sermon.
1 Peter 2, verse 13. Therefore, submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme or to governors as those who are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers. So notice we're to submit to every ordinance, but the things we submit to are those which are good, right? And the point is to regulate evildoers, not those who do good. So it says, as those who are, to submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether to the king as supreme or to governors, as those are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and for the praise of those who do good. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. As free, yet not using your liberty as a cloak for vice, but as bondservants of God. Honor all people, love the brotherhood, fear God, honor the king. And so to regulate people who are doing good is not the government's job, not the state's job. The state's job is to regulate those who are doing evil. So I strongly believe if this bill is passed, it will protect the freedom of homeschooling parents while reaffirming that the great state of Wyoming respects and upholds the God-given rights of parents. I urge you to support this bill, ensuring that parents can rightfully take responsibility for what is ours inherently, that is our children. So thank you so much for your attention to this important matter, and I do thank you guys for everything you do here in serving our state.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Mr. Emerson? Okay, thanks again for your testimony. We appreciate it. All right, last but not least?
I
No?
will be very
Maybe.
quick. My name is Monique McGinnis. I'm Madam Chair. My name is Monique McGinnis. I resided in Uinta County, Wyoming for almost 18 years, current resident of Laramie County, and I'm a homeschooling parent of 5 years. We decided early on we would homeschool our children. So when they get to study something, we then travel to see whatever we're studying. And I'm thankful for that. But when we came to the conclusion to homeschool, it was very confusing when you look at a letter and you think, I'm sending this in, they must approve it. They must need to approve. And I think for any logical human being, that's how we view the letter of intent. And when you read it, especially the one that I have, and have copies from the Uinta County School District of Wyoming, I forgot it at home, I left it on my desk. They actually ask you to then go and not only show your curriculum, but then show your plan of education and how you plan to execute that, which is an overreach when they don't have any type of leverage. So that would be my first thing. The other thing is I ran a few businesses and I've ran other committees and community service organizations, and you always look for what you need to eliminate to increase your funding, but reduce spending, or eliminate positions that cost money or simply are bureaucratic. And when you look at this, it's simply bureaucratic. And when you have a young mom or dad who's trying to decide, should I homeschool my child? And then you're thinking, am I going to do it right? And you have all these other thoughts. And then you have to report to the district. It does feel really overwhelming. And I have sat with moms who have cried because they're scared the district is going to say their curriculum is wrong when they may have a children with a disability and they need to go slower, or they're afraid they're not going to hit a standard because that child does have a disability and they need to do things different. And so when you sit and watch that, it's really hard. That's not my situation, but I've sat with plenty of moms. So I just wanted to share that piece too. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. McGinnis? Still upset that you guys left Uinta County, but
I know, we miss you too.
Wish you the best.
Luckily, we
over
get
here.
to see you
Wish
while
you the
you're here.
best, of course. If there's no questions, thank you for your testimony. Mr. Brown, you're back.
Madam Chair, Boyd Brown, Executive Director for the Wyoming Association of School Administrators. Again, the superintendents support this, the idea of homeschool parents just turning their curriculum into us, and us having to say that they're okay. We do nothing with evaluating them or anything like that. It's very confusing to board members when they first come onto the board and they ask you, well, why do we get those? Well, it's a statute that we're required to take them, so very much in support of this.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Brown? All right, thank you. Welcome. I think we might know you as well, but please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Corin Schmidt. I'm the Director of the Department of Family Services. Previous testimony spoke to some of the testimony we offered on the other side. Just here to answer any questions that you may have about how we investigate allegations of educational neglect or any of those processes.
Questions for Mr. Schmidt? Okay. The statute that's left in there where they're, where the student had been in the public schools and then had to notify that they're leaving, does that suffice for the DFS?
Madam Chairwoman, yes, that's helpful, but when we don't necessarily know when we get a report whether that family is homeschooling or not. So we have used the curriculum part of it as a way just to know that that is a homeschooling family, and then of course educational neglect isn't really then part of the purview. We have to, per the statutes, education is defined as neglect, educational neglect. So we'll go through our process, we'll get a report, we'll make a determination whether there's enough information to be able to investigate. We'll go out to the home, and then if a family says we're homeschooling, then we can track back to the district to say, is this family homeschooling, and then we'll close the case. It's a tool that will no longer be there, but we will continue to work around it and do our investigations regardless.
Okay. Other questions for Ms. Schmidt? Okay, thank you for your testimony, appreciate it. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify? Anyone online? Oh, whoops, sorry.
Not
we
for
got
this
more.
one, Madam
Sorry, I
Chairman.
didn't see you coming. She was hiding behind the pillar. Okay, yeah, when you're behind the pillar, it's almost like you're invisible, but welcome. Please
Madam
introduce
Chair,
yourself.
Committee, thank you. My name's Erin Waskowitz. I am a homeschool mom here in Cheyenne. I was one of the 2020 homeschoolers. And when I first started researching how to do that, of course, I came across the letter of intent and I set that in, and it was a very nerve-wracking process because I had never done it. I didn't know what to think. And a few weeks later, when I live out in the country, I got a notice that I needed to go to the post office and pick up a certified letter from LCSD1. I was terrified because I just thought, oh my goodness, I'm doing something wrong. They're gonna come to get me. And since then, I've experienced 2 different superintendents. The new superintendent doesn't do that. So the process within each district changes, and it is quite confusing. So thank you for your time.
Okay, questions for Ms., I can't even pronounce your last name, Erin? Questions for Erin? Okay, thank you for your testimony. With that, I don't see any others coming forward. I think we'll go ahead and close public testimony. What's your pleasure on this bill, committee?
Move the bill.
Move the bill by Senator Brennan. Potential amendments? It is a really short, sweet little bill, I have to admit. Don't say that very often, but, all right. If there's no, okay, question's been called, let's go ahead and take roll.
Madam Chairman, on House Bill 46, Homeschool Freedom Act, do pass. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Olson is excused. Senator Rothfuss?
Aye.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Aye.
4 aye, 1 excused.
Okay. I noticed we don't have a senator listed, representative. Oh, okay. Senator Brennan said she'll take it on, so. Okay, unless you have, yeah, I think Senator Salazar said if no one else did, he would also, so. We'll let those two kind of, they can battle back and forth to see who's, all right, thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, for your testimony. Appreciate you coming on a cold, snowy day to testify. Have a good day.